The wine glass was still spinning when I stood up. Not from my hand. No, I hadn't touched it. She had slammed it down so hard the base twirled like it was trying to escape the table, just like I was trying to escape the moment. Say it, she whispered through clenched teeth, cheeks flushed in a way that had nothing to do with alcohol. The restaurant was too quiet now. We were still seated, technically, but we weren't really there. People at the nearby tables had started to glance sideways, the way strangers do when they sense something private falling apart in public. You could feel their curiosity like static on skin. And then I looked at him. Ryan. Sitting across from me like a smug centerpiece between our unraveling. Elbows on the table. Shirt too tight for the occasion. That kind of confidence you only earn by not caring who you hurt. He looked me dead in the eye, smirked, and took another bite of bread like this was his date. You embarrassed him, she hissed at me, like I'd knocked over a child at a birthday party. You need to apologize. I didn't move. I could barely breathe. 2 hours earlier, this was supposed to be our night. A quiet table by the window. A chance to reconnect. I had booked this place a month in advance. She hadn't said thank you. She hadn't even complimented the setup. She just brought him. No explanation. No heads up. Just, Ryan's joining. Hope you don't mind. He sat where the candlelight should have been. Now, here she was, not asking, not pleading, but demanding that I apologize to the guy who hijacked our night like he was the guest of honor. So I laughed. Not because it was funny, it wasn't. I laughed because I couldn't believe I was here. Because I couldn't believe she thought this was normal. Because somewhere deep down, I knew I had no one to blame but myself for letting it get this far. I stood up. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't flip the table. I just said, loud enough for both of them to hear. Pick. Right now. Him or me. Her mouth fell open like she hadn't expected me to have a spine. And Ryan, still chewing, looked mildly amused, like I had just added a little spice to an otherwise boring evening. I didn't wait for her answer. I turned and walked out, heart racing, hands cold, questions screaming inside my head. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I wasn't staying. And what happened after that? Well, let's just say she made her choice. But she had no idea what I already knew. No idea what I had seen. And no idea what I was about to do next. I didn't make it far before I sat down on a bench across the street, staring at my reflection in the dark glass of the restaurant window. I could still see them in there, her hands fidgeting with her napkin, Ryan stretching like he'd just won a prize. I waited, foolishly, for her to chase after me. I gave it 5 minutes. Then 10. I even reached for my phone once, thumb hovering over her name, but I didn't press it. Instead, I scrolled to the photo I had taken earlier that day, the one I wasn't supposed to see. You see, this didn't come out of nowhere. I hadn't told her, but I'd been noticing things for a while now. Little slips. Mismatched stories. The way she suddenly changed her lock screen from a photo of us to a quote about freedom. I wasn't proud of it, but I'd done something I'd never done before. I checked her shared photo album with Ryan. She forgot to turn off syncing. And there it was, a picture of the two of them at a rooftop bar 2 weeks ago. Her in the dress she told me she only wore for me. His hand suspiciously close to her waist. But it wasn't the photo that broke me. It was the caption. To the nights we never have to explain. She thought it was private. She thought I'd never see it. But I did. And I kept it in my pocket like a wound I wasn't ready to show anyone. Back on the bench, I stared at that photo, zooming in until the pixels blurred. I wasn't angry. Not in the way movies show, with yelling or punches or dramatic exits. I was just tired. Tired of begging for crumbs of attention. Tired of pretending I was okay with being a second option in my own relationship. Then my phone lit up. Lenora, where did you go? I didn't respond. Lenora, you embarrassed me. I blinked at the screen. Lenora, Ryan said you're being immature. We were trying to include you. Include me. In my own date night. That was the moment I realized this wasn't about Ryan. Not really. This was about her seeing me as someone who would never leave, no matter how many lines she blurred. She thought I was too soft, too patient, too quiet. And maybe she was right, until now. So I texted her back. Me. You made your choice. I'll come get my things tomorrow. No question mark. No begging. No more trying to fix something built on quicksand. Then I turned off my phone. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake on my friend's couch, staring at the ceiling fan spinning shadows on the wall, replaying every moment where I had let things slide. Every time I told myself I was being dramatic. Every time I believed her when she said, "You're just imagining it." But I wasn't imagining it. Not anymore. And in the morning, when I showed up to her apartment, something happened I never saw coming. Her door was already open, and Ryan was standing inside, smiling. I froze in the hallway. The door to Lenora's apartment was cracked just enough to see inside, but it was wide enough to reveal that Ryan was there. Alone. At least, I thought he was. He was leaning against her kitchen counter, one ankle casually crossed over the other, sipping from a mug that definitely didn't belong to him. It had a cartoon octopus on it, Lenora's favorite, something she picked up on a trip we took together in Monterey. The same trip where she told me she wanted to build a future. He looked up and saw me standing there. And he grinned. Not surprised. Not startled. Like he'd been waiting. "Oh hey," he said, tilting the mug. "Didn't think you'd show up this early." I stepped inside slowly, scanning the room. Lenora wasn't visible, but her purse was on the couch. Her shoes, the ones she always kicked off the moment she got home, were in their usual place near the door. That meant she was here. Somewhere. Probably in the shower. Or worse, in the bedroom. With him. I tried to keep my voice steady. "Where is she?" Ryan shrugged. Said she needed a minute. "She's been crying all morning. You really did a number on her last night." I wanted to laugh. I did a number on her? I stared at this guy, this uninvited parasite who'd been circling our relationship like a vulture for years, and wondered how I had ever let this go on for so long. "I came to get my stuff," I said flatly. He didn't move. Just sipped. "You sure that's what you want?" That was the moment I realized something chilling. He wasn't just here for emotional support. He wasn't crashing on her couch after a breakup. He was comfortable, standing there like he lived there. Like I was the one trespassing. I noticed his overnight bag slouched by the hallway closet. A phone charger plugged into the wall. A hoodie on the armrest that definitely wasn't mine. How long had he been here? Before I could speak again, Lenora appeared in the hallway behind him. She was wearing one of his shirts, not mine, and she flinched when she saw me. Her eyes were red, lips chapped, like she'd been crying but hadn't finished. "Daryl," she started, stepping toward me. I raised a hand. "Don't." Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. She looked like she was searching for the right words, the right angle to spin it from. But whatever script she'd rehearsed in her head, it collapsed the moment our eyes met. "I came to get my things," I repeated, this time louder, more certain. Ryan looked at her, then at me. "You don't have to be dramatic about it. We can all talk like adults." That was it. That was the moment everything inside me flipped. Because I realized this wasn't just betrayal, it was arrogance. They didn't expect consequences. They expected me to nod, accept, and maybe even apologize for making things uncomfortable. I stepped forward, slowly, deliberately, and reached into my coat pocket. Both of them watched me like I was about to pull out a weapon. Instead, I pulled out an envelope. "Give this to her," I told Ryan, sliding it onto the counter without looking at him. "And don't worry, it's not a letter bomb. Just truth. Something neither of you are used to." Then I turned to Lenora. "You won't have to worry about me anymore. You chose him. Just make sure he's still around when it's his turn to get bored." I walked out before she could respond. And in that envelope? Not a goodbye letter. Not a list of accusations. Just a printed photo, the one from her shared album, with one line written beneath it in red ink. "To the nights we never have to explain until now." I thought that would be the end. But it wasn't. Because 3 days later, her sister called me. And what she told me made everything 10 times worse. I didn't answer her call at first. Lenora's sister, Margot, had never really been in the middle of anything between us. She was one of those people who smiled tightly at family dinners and scrolled silently through her phone when things got tense. We'd never had a real conversation outside of holidays. So when her name lit up on my screen 3 days after I walked out, I stared at it in confusion. It rang 3 times. Then 4. I almost let it go to voicemail until something in me clicked. I answered. "Daryl," she said, out of breath, like she'd been pacing or crying. "Are you okay?" I hesitated. Yeah. Why?" There was a pause on the other end. A rustling, then the faint sound of a door closing. She was somewhere private. "I wasn't going to get involved," she said quickly. "But I saw what Lenora posted this morning and I had to call." I sat up straighter. What did she post? She took a picture down an hour later, but I saw it before it disappeared. It was a photo of her and Ryan. In bed. Not doing anything, but clearly naked under the covers. She captioned it, "No more secrets. Just us." My stomach twisted. Margot kept talking. She said she was finally living her truth. But Daryl, that's not what I'm calling about. It's something else. I held my breath. She's been rewriting the whole story. telling people you were emotionally unstable, that you were controlling, that you were the reason she and Ryan got close. Of course she was. She wasn't just moving on, she was erasing me and repainting the wreckage like I was the one who lit the match. I felt my face go hot. It wasn't enough to leave me, she needed to make sure I looked small in the stories she'd tell everyone else. But Margot wasn't done. She said something else. Something weird. Last night she got drunk and told me that Ryan had been, well, sleeping over for months. She said you already knew and were pretending not to. That it made things easier. I stood up, heart pounding. What? She thinks you always knew. That you just didn't care enough to confront her. That you were too spineless to stop her. I didn't even realize I was shaking until I spilled water from the glass in my hand. Spineless. That's what she thought of me. That's what she always thought. I was the placeholder. The fallback. The one she could humiliate quietly, slowly, and still expect to forgive her every time. But the most haunting part? She wasn't entirely wrong. I had known, deep down. For weeks. Months, maybe. And I did pretend. Because I thought if I loved her enough, she'd stop hurting me. That night, I sat in my apartment with my laptop open, staring at her social media. She had deleted the photo, just like Margot said, but the damage had already been done. Friends were commenting with vague congratulations. Some were tagging Ryan in jokes that made my stomach churn. There was no shame, no guilt, just celebration, like I had never existed. But it wasn't over. Not for me. Because buried in the mess of comments was one I recognized instantly. From Ryan's ex-girlfriend. Her name was Celeste. And her comment was simple, funny how history repeats. I clicked her profile. My hands were sweating. Her entire feed was private, except for one post from 2 weeks ago. A screenshot of a text message. Ryan, trust me, babe. She's just a backup plan. Always has been. I stared at the screen, breath caught in my throat. He wasn't just using me. He was using her too. And suddenly, I wasn't the only one carrying receipts. I must have read that message from Celeste 10 times before it truly settled in my chest like a stone. She's just a backup plan. Not, she's the one. Not even she doesn't matter. No, it was colder than that. It meant Lenora wasn't special to him either. She was just temporary. A placeholder. The irony stung like ice against a burn. The very woman who treated me like I was disposable was now the one being played by the man she'd replaced me with. And she didn't even know it. But I did. And now I had a choice. Walk away, let her live in the illusion, or do something about it. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I messaged Celeste. I didn't expect a reply. I just introduced myself and said, I think we both got used. That's it. No accusations. No plan. Just honesty. She responded within 5 minutes. Her first message, you have no idea. Within the hour, we were on a video call, 2 complete strangers linked only by the same mistake. She looked tired, not in the physical sense, but in the way someone looks after being lied to so many times that they stop believing anything at all. She told me that Ryan had a pattern, a long one. That Lenora was the 3rd woman he had rescued from a failing relationship, only to slowly isolate and manipulate. He has this way of making you feel like your current partner is the problem, she said. Then he swoops in, says all the right things, builds this emotional affair until you slip, and by the time you realize what he is, you've already pushed everyone else away. I sat back, stunned. She wasn't bitter. She was precise. Like someone who had rehearsed the words too many times in her head. But the worst part, she said, leaning forward. He never stays. Once the relationship becomes his, he gets bored. He needs the chase, not the person. I couldn't speak. Every piece of the puzzle was clicking into place. Lenora hadn't just chosen someone else. She'd walked straight into a pattern, thinking she was writing a love story, not realizing she was chapter 3 in a much darker book. Celeste had screenshots, texts, voice notes, even a screen recording of him FaceTiming her while still dating Lenora, saying, I'm just being patient. She's not ready to leave him yet. The date on that video? 2 weeks before Lenora gave me that you need to apologize ultimatum. I didn't know what to feel anymore. Rage? Vindication? Maybe just exhaustion. But I knew one thing for certain, I wasn't going to keep quiet. I thanked Celeste. I didn't ask her to get involved. I didn't need her to. She'd been burned enough already. But what she did next, I'll never forget. She posted the video, publicly, and tagged both Ryan and Lenora. It didn't even take an hour before I started getting texts. First from an unknown number, you better take that down. This is defamation. Then from Lenora, I need to talk. Please. It's not what it looks like. That one nearly made me laugh out loud. I ignored them both. But 2 days later, Lenora showed up. At my apartment. Soaked in rain, makeup streaked, hair tangled like she'd run through a storm. And her first words? Not, I'm sorry. Not, you were right. She looked at me and whispered, why didn't you protect me from him? And I realized, with a crushing weight, she still didn't get it. I stood in the doorway, staring at her, drenched, shaking, mascara bleeding like ink over pages of a story she no longer controlled. I didn't move. She wasn't supposed to be here. She wasn't supposed to come back. And definitely not with that question. Why didn't you protect me from him? It knocked the wind out of me. Not because I didn't expect some kind of excuse or spin, but because even now, even after all the lies and deception, she was trying to shift the blame. I was the one she had abandoned. I was the one she had replaced. I was the one sitting alone in our apartment, eating leftovers she used to complain about, while she posted photos of fresh starts. And now I was supposed to be her shield? I stepped aside without a word, mostly because the storm behind her was pouring buckets and I didn't want the hallway neighbors watching. She stepped inside hesitantly, water dripping from her sleeves onto the hardwood like guilt she couldn't mop up. She looked around like everything was unfamiliar, like the place had shifted since she left. I guess it had. The framed photo of us from last fall? Gone. The blanket she used to curl up in? Folded and packed in a box. Even the tiny clay mug she made at that stupid pottery date, shattered, days ago. In a moment of weakness I now regretted. Daryl, she said finally, her voice cracking. I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know he was a liar. I interrupted. A manipulator? A walking cliché wrapped in charm and overpriced cologne. She flinched. I didn't know he was doing that to other women, she added, softly. I thought what we had was real. I almost pitied her. Almost. I begged you, I said, my voice rising for the first time in months. I begged you to see what he was. I tried to talk to you about boundaries. You called me controlling. I tried to explain how it felt to be constantly sidelined. You said I was insecure. I stood there while you dismantled everything we had and handed it to him gift-wrapped, and now you want sympathy? She blinked hard, her lower lip trembling. I made a mistake. No, Lenora, I snapped, stepping closer. You made a choice. Repeatedly. You let him crawl between us and watched him tear me down with a smile. You didn't just fall into this. You chose him. You defended him. You told me to apologize to him. Do you remember that? She didn't answer. She didn't have to. I saw the video, I said, softer now. The one Celeste posted. The one where he called you a backup plan. Her shoulders sagged. I didn't know, she repeated, voice barely audible. He said things, made me feel seen. I thought you didn't want me anymore. You stopped holding me. You stopped fighting. I stopped, I said slowly, because I could tell I'd already lost. We stood there in silence. Her in the ruins of what she thought was a triumph. Me in the ruins of what I thought was love. Why are you here, Lenora? I finally asked. She looked up, her eyes brimming. Because I don't know who I am without you. That broke something in me I didn't even know was still intact. She hadn't come back for me. She had come back because she didn't want to be alone. Because Ryan had moved on. Because the applause died down. Because shame had finally found its way in. I'm not your cure, I said quietly. You threw that away the night you let him sit across from me and call it inclusion. I walked to the door and held it open. You deserve better, she said, voice trembling again. I just didn't see it until it was too late, I finished. She stepped out slowly, and for the first time, she didn't argue. She didn't plead. She just walked. And I thought that was the last chapter. But the next morning, I opened my email and found something that would unravel everything all over again. An anonymous message. One sentence. Check his phone records. You'll want to see who he was really calling while she was with you. I stared at the email for a long time. The message had no subject line, no name, no clue as to who sent it. Just one chilling sentence. Check his phone records. You'll want to see who he was really calling while she was with you. It sounded like bait. Like the kind of thing you delete and forget because diving in means inviting pain. But curiosity mixed with paranoia is a toxic thing, and my brain had already started unraveling possibilities before I could stop it. The thing was, I couldn't access Ryan's phone records. He wasn't someone I had any real connection to. But I remembered something. Months ago, Lenora had used our shared Wi-Fi password to help Ryan set up some streaming app on his tablet. The paranoid part of me had, at the time, created a local login to our router to see what devices connected and when. I never removed access. Don't ask why I did that. I just did. Gut instinct? Insecurity? Survival? Either way, I logged into the router portal. To my surprise, Ryan's device, labeled Ree's iPad Pro, had been auto-connecting every time he was near our place, even after I left. Even last night, I scanned through the connected sessions and noticed something strange. Every time Lenora had supposedly been with me, late nights or date nights when she told me she was just heading to bed early, his device had connected to our Wi-Fi between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. Multiple times. Patterned. Predictable. Intimate. And then I found something that turned my blood cold. One of those nights, specifically the same night she called in sick to a weekend getaway we had planned, there were outbound log entries to a third-party call forwarding app. I couldn't see the numbers, but I recognized the service. It's used to mask real calls through different devices. It also stores voicemail, unless cleared. That was my next move. I dug deep into old backup links, folders I had ignored in our shared cloud, and found an auto-synced audio file, dated 2 months ago. I nearly dropped my phone when I hit play. Ryan's voice. She's in the shower. No, she doesn't know I'm calling. She still thinks I'm keeping her busy. I'll get the video, don't worry. Just make sure she never sees the wire transfer. I've got her wrapped up tight. She thinks this is love. Then silence. I had to sit down. This wasn't just infidelity. This wasn't just emotional manipulation. Ryan was working with someone else. I didn't know who the other person was. I didn't know what video he was talking about, or what money was being hidden. But this wasn't about love. It wasn't even about lust. This was a setup. I replayed the message again, trying to isolate details in the background, a faint hum, maybe a television in another room. Nothing concrete. That's when I remembered Celeste. I hadn't spoken to her since she posted the video. I messaged her again, quickly, asking if she'd ever heard Ryan talk about someone else. A third party. Something involving money. She called me instantly. I was waiting for you to find that, she said, without even a hello. You knew? I asked, voice cracking. I knew he was doing something sketchy. I didn't know how deep it went, she said. But the day I left him, he was on the phone with someone named Carson. I don't know who that is, but he sounded scared, like he owed him something. My mind reeled. Carson. That name, it pinged something. And then I remembered. Lenora's old coworker. A guy from her previous office who was quietly fired. Something about inappropriate use of company funds. She told me about him once, laughing like it was a joke. Said he was the kind of guy who talked fast and disappeared faster. Now it made sense. Ryan was helping Carson run something shady, and Lenora, somehow, had become a pawn. Or worse, an accomplice who didn't realize she was in over her head. I didn't want to save her. Not anymore. But I also couldn't look away. I gathered every file, screenshot, and recording I had. I copied them to a USB stick, then mailed it anonymously to her office. No note. No signature. Just a label on the envelope. Truth, before it swallows you too. I thought that would be the end. But I underestimated her. Because the next time I saw Lenora, she wasn't crying. She was furious. And she brought company. When I opened my front door that day, I expected drama. I expected tears. What I didn't expect was to see Lenora standing on my porch with a man in a charcoal suit behind her and a folder clutched in her hands like it weighed 1,000 pounds. She didn't say anything at first. Just stared at me, tight-lipped, like she didn't trust her own voice. I stood in the doorway, arms crossed, silent, waiting. Finally, she spoke. I know you sent it, she said, her voice low. The envelope. The recordings. The logs. I didn't confirm or deny it. The man beside her stepped forward. My name's David Landry, private investigator. Ms. Brock hired me last week. She believed there was more to the story than Ryan ever told her. She was right. He handed me the folder. We confirmed the man Ryan was working with is Carson Vellum, currently under investigation for corporate fraud, laundering, and identity manipulation. Your audio file helped connect the dots. Lenora's accounts were being used, without her knowledge, as transaction bridges. She was being set up. I glanced at Lenora. Her eyes were rimmed with red, but not from crying. It was something deeper. Humility. Fear. A flicker of strength trying to crawl back from months of being played. I didn't come here to blame you, she said, voice cracking. I came to thank you. I didn't expect that. I never saw it. I didn't want to see it. And when you left, I thought it meant I had one. That Ryan and I were finally free of judgment. But he wasn't with me. He was using me. She looked down at her hands, voice trembling. I was angry when I opened that envelope. I wanted to destroy it, pretend it was fake. But you didn't just walk away, Daryl. You left with dignity. And you left the truth behind. I didn't know what to say. For the first time in this entire ordeal, I felt like I had nothing to prove. She stepped back. I'm leaving town. New job, different state. I need to rebuild, legally, emotionally, all of it. And I wanted to say I'm sorry. Not because I got caught, but because I finally understand what I lost. I gave a slight nod. I hope you find peace. That night, after they left, I sat in my apartment, the same couch where I once curled up, wondering if I was the problem. But this time, I wasn't consumed by doubt. I felt light. I had walked through fire, and somehow, I wasn't scorched anymore. Weeks passed. No messages. No drama. Just quiet. And then, slowly, things started to feel new again. I started going for morning walks. I reconnected with people I had pushed away while trapped in that relationship. I even picked up my old camera again, something I hadn't touched in years. It felt like breathing for the first time. One Saturday morning, I was taking photos at a local park when a woman approached, smiling curiously. "You're in my shot," I said, half laughing, pointing to the lens. She grinned. "Then you better make sure I look good." We talked. Her name was Elise. Graphic designer. Dog person. No, best friend named Ryan. Just real laughter, honest words, and a calmness I hadn't felt in ages. We exchanged numbers. And this time, I didn't feel the need to explain my past. I didn't feel broken. I felt ready. Maybe heartbreak doesn't always end in revenge or fireworks. Sometimes, the most powerful ending is simply choosing yourself and walking into something new, knowing exactly what you'll never settle for again.